So, real quick, before we get in, I just wanted to say thank you for all of you that participated in that survey I put out last video. I have gotten some amazingly good information off that, and thanks to that good information, I have completely revamped the Patreon already, and more stuff is coming. Also, by the way, there will be a fully uncut version of this video with all the extra topics and like bloopers and what have you on the Patreon for $5 and up. So, there you go, patrons. We are already giving you cool new stuff. Today, we're going to talk about how some people are already saying that Fallout New Vegas 2 is coming now that Microsoft owns Bethesda and Obsidian and the Fallout IP. And I am here to say that the worst thing that Fallout New Vegas 2 could possibly do is exist. And believe it or not, I'm going to back that up. So, real quick, let me just flip. As we have previously established, Bethesda just acquired Microsoft. The acquisition went through. There were no complaints by the Fed about this acquisition that led to it being derailed. Everything's like official. They're doing the, oh, welcome to the Microsoft family with all the little cartoon avatars of like various Bethesda intellectual properties. And among them is Fallout. And some people have already made some bad takes about how, oh, Fallout New Vegas 2 is coming. It's all but confirmed. It's not confirmed. No one has said anything about this yet, and I highly doubt they would anytime soon. The best way to describe it is it's within the realm of possibility. However, the more you think about it, the more you realize that having a Fallout New Vegas 2 would be a bad idea for literally everyone involved with that whole thing. Like, it wouldn't be good for Microsoft, it wouldn't be good for Bethesda, it wouldn't be good for Obsidian, it would not be good for the fans, it would not be good for the Fallout franchise. No one has anything to gain, and they have a whole lot to lose from New Vegas 2 existing. So, first entity that really doesn't need a Fallout New Vegas 2 is Microsoft. While it is expected that they want their recently acquired property to start putting out more properties that will make them money and recoup the investment, Bethesda's already got a lot of stuff going on between them and all their studios. Like, Bethesda themselves has Deathloop coming out this year. Fallout 76 is going strong and becoming a much better game than it was at launch. We're eventually going to see The Elder Scrolls 6, and we still have The Elder Scrolls Online. Starfield is coming one of these days, and it just got done wrapping up Doom Eternal. I'm sure they already have another project in the works, because that's usually how game studios work, I think. Like, I find that all the studios that implode are ones that couldn't secure projects like after they finish one project, and the ones that seem to do well over the years are the people that like sort of secure a project in all but name while they're finishing up the last project so that they just hit the ground running. I am literally the Charlatan wonder, so don't take my word for that. It's also highly likely that Obsidian is currently working on something that they've been working on since wrapping up The Outer Worlds. I believe The Outer Worlds recently had what I think is the final DLC be put out. So they've likely already started another project that would be something they were doing under the wing of Microsoft. And I'm sure Microsoft would not appreciate it if Obsidian dropped everything to work on something that maybe it's not in their best interest to work on. And even if, let's say, Microsoft eventually did greenlight a Fallout New Vegas 2 as a collaboration between Bethesda and Obsidian, that wouldn't have any sort of return for a long time. Because for various reasons, including Obsidian not having the rights to work on Fallout because they did not own the license until now, and they still don't even actually own a license. They're just the people that own the license also own them. So we wouldn't see anything for a long time. So no point in getting hyped now anyway. Let's move on to Bethesda. Does not need a Fallout New Vegas 2 right now. Fallout 76 is doing fine. Fallout 5 is likely already in the works and is hopefully coming along fine. I hope they take a lot of the stuff they're learning in 76 and apply it to 5. And as previously mentioned, they've got a lot of other irons in the fire between all their other subsidiaries like Arcane and id. They have a lot of stuff going on already. So adding another thing to that pile that was kind of something they likely weren't thinking they were ever going to work on again probably isn't the best idea. And additionally, there is probably some level of acknowledgement among Bethesda's brass that any sort of New Vegas property that directly involves them will be rebuked by all the New Vegas fandom, because the big thing is Bethesda bad with those people. There is a big, like, I don't know how to describe it, like, general feeling that, like, Bethesda equals bad when dealing with, like, Fallout topics. I'm not going to condemn or condone that, but for the sake of this argument, they know at some level that there are enough people that don't like it when they touch Fallout that it's not going to go over well for them if they have any involvement in that. But what about Obsidian? They're the ones that made New Vegas in the first place, and the first thing to acknowledge about Obsidian is they are not the same studio that they were 10 years ago when they made Fallout New Vegas. I believe most, if not all of the staff has changed out since then. The last few projects they put out over the last 5 years are either like mediocre or unfinished. As a point of example for my own experience, The Outer Worlds, it just feels like it's trying to be New Vegas so hard, but just falls flat on its face. Obsidian won't have the same excuses as they did last time. A big thing that comes up when defending Fallout New Vegas for the detracting factors it has is they only had 18 months to do it, and Bethesda was a big fat meanie butt about everything. When the more I read into it, it seems like Bethesda was trying to be cool, but like Obsidian kept on tripping over their own feet at times. But regardless of what did or did not happen there, a lot of excuses are made for New Vegas, and a lot of fan patching and modding is done to make the game smoother. Like, heck, I play New Vegas vanilla because I'm a psychopath, and also because I need to get as authentic footage as possible for various videos I do, and the game will crash every 20 to 35 minutes for no reason. Like, if anything, I feel like I'm rolling the dice every time I instance into a new area. And something else we'd have to come to terms with is Obsidian's writing is not as good as we think it is. Like, a lot of people love to do the direct comparison between Fallout 3 and New Vegas, and there's some nostalgia glasses involved in that, but additionally, like, if you've played the games recently, you're aware that, like, Obsidian's capable of making really bad writing too. It's like the one is, what is it, when Cass talks about Long Dick Johnson or something like that, and the patrolling the Mojave, like, Obsidian is capable of bad writing too, and especially when we revisit, say, The Outer Worlds, which I wouldn't say is overtly bad, but it's just really uninspired. That's another thing we're going to have to come to terms with if Obsidian makes New Vegas 2, is that they are not as good as we thought they were at this sort of thing. And that will primarily owe to the fact that all the original writers that made New Vegas so good in the first place aren't with the company anymore. And to be fair, they could bring them back. They could. But based on recent events, I don't know if that would happen. Then let's talk about how the Fallout series does not need a New Vegas 2. When we think about New Vegas itself and how the game ended, no matter what ending you picked, everything was tied up neatly. Each and every major and minor faction had some sort of ending to their story, and it was done. And yes, there was cut post-game content, which some people have restored through mods, but it was really kind of like just letting you play post-story content and like finish up quests instead of just having the game end. So any addition to the New Vegas storyline would undo how neatly Obsidian was able to tie everything up out in the Mojave. Additionally, just from a lore standpoint, the West is pretty civilized now, and no matter who you go with in the Battle of Hoover Dam, be it yourself, be it the Legion, be it New California, be it Mr. House, everything gets tied up and civilization comes to the Mojave. Like, no matter what, the West is civilized now, and being in a civilized world does not make for a nuclear apocalypse RPG experience like the original Fallouts were. So maybe that's why also the Fallout franchise moves east to Washington, D.C., to Boston, to even like the big conversion mod is in Miami. And Fallout 76, while that does take place earlier in the timeline, that's out in Appalachia, places where we haven't seen the story, we haven't seen how things are settling down. So if we go back to the Mojave, it's going to be a very dull experience. So on top of invalidating whatever story choices that the player character did in New Vegas, which was one of its big selling points, is you can do whatever you wanted in New Vegas, is that there'd be a massive amount of hand-waving to try and explain, oh, why are we still in New Vegas? Why are we still here? What is happening? Like, factions that were dealt with in the previous game by one way or another would have to suddenly be back. And you could say maybe they go north to like what is it, Colorado and Washington, but I wouldn't be unsympathetic of Obsidian, Microsoft, or Bethesda if, thanks to certain events, they don't want to touch that area with a 10-foot pole. Another thing to consider is that unless they radically change how New Vegas 2 plays as a game compared to New Vegas 1, which is reasonable to think about because like it's a sequel to a game that was made over 10 years ago, it's gonna be a dull experience because one thing we can really look at is circling back to the Outer Worlds. They really pushed hard in the advertising that this is the people that made New Vegas. This is Obsidian, they made New Vegas. And I gotta be honest, when I played Outer Worlds and I made my video of it, I really got the feeling that that game was trying really hard to be Fallout New Vegas 1.5. And that game, despite coming out in I think 2019, yeah, 2019, late 2019, despite it coming out in late 2019, that game felt dated. Like, that's the worst thing ever, is if your game comes out new and it already feels like it's a game from at least 5 years ago. And that just goes to show that a game that follows the same formula as New Vegas is not going to do well critically. However, if they changed it, we are running into the problem of the fact that especially fans of older games, people like who've been playing New Vegas for 10 years straight, who've been just injecting more and more mods into the game so they can keep the experience fresh, they're gonna hate change. That's just a fact of life. So it seems like there's really no pleasing anyone making a sequel. So it's just gonna be a big sloppy mess, especially when we consider that Obsidian is not who they used to be, that none of the holding companies have any sort of reason to greenlight this project, and the place in the continuity that the Mojave and the West is in right now, it just wouldn't make sense to return to the strip. And then, since we've talked about him a bit, the New Vegas fandom and the Fallout fandom at large probably would not need a Fallout New Vegas 2 right now, because Fallout New Vegas is deified among fans. They love it. They make, like we said before, so many excuses for the game. They talk this thing up to high heaven. They refuse to compare it to other games because other games just aren't good enough. And having a direct sequel to that game that directly plays off what New Vegas was like would shatter that illusion. And even if it is real to someone, still people are going to notice big holes in New Vegas because those big holes will likely be carried over into New Vegas 2, as is the way of things when you make a direct sequel to a game. Sometimes you have to bring over the bad stuff for better or worse. And nothing could possibly live up to, what is it now, 11 years of hype? Like at least 11 years. Like if we assume that people are hyped for the next thing for the New Vegas series since New Vegas the first came out, nothing could possibly live up to the amount of hype waiting that long for a sequel of a game. It just wouldn't do it, no matter how good of a game it is. Even if all the issues that I have brought up previously in this video so far get resolved, there's no way that, like assuming it takes them a few years to make, that New Vegas 2 lives up to 15 to 20 years of hype. The coping would dwarf the coping we saw in Cyberpunk 2077. It would be insane. It would be nutty. And again, it isn't a good idea based on how long it's been and how the people that made the first game just aren't around anymore. And this isn't one of those like very smarmy, oh, you think you want this, but you don't actually want this type of situations. This is a, yes, you want this, you have every right to want this, but you need to be aware that nothing could possibly live up to your expectations based on circumstances and what we've got to work with. And finally, just because I know some people hate everything to do with them, New Vegas 2 would likely either be based on Fallout 76 or Fallout 5, because if we assume that they're going to make New Vegas the same way they made the first one, it's going to be based on a fully built Fallout game so Obsidian can focus on the story. And some people just hate everything to do with the number 76 or anything to do with Bethesdafallout. So that's just not going to do it for some people. Now, just to make sure I'm willing to take my lumps here, I will readily admit that I can be wrong about everything in this video, and I take the Snyder Cut as a perfect example of that. I used to believe the same thing about the Snyder Cut as I did with Fallout New Vegas 2, is that the best thing it could do was not exist. However, I'll admit I was proven wrong about that. However, we should also think about how the Snyder Cut is likely the exception that proves the rule. rather than it just being like a slightly different cut or a big what about or what if. It actually turned out that, yeah, because of personal, very tragic reasons in his own life, Zack Snyder had to walk away from everything and left this massive, half-finished movie, like, for someone else to pick up. And then Joss Whedon came in and kind of just cobbled something together, including trying to make it more like a Marvel movie, which unfortunately the tone and setting of the DC universe just did not fit. And yeah, we got something that was crappy. And then when we finally had Zack Snyder return, it was a much better experience. And that's all I'm willing to delve into that, because that's another hot mess and another beehive that I really can't kick anymore right now. I could be wrong about this. It could turn out that, yes, Obsidian could pull it together, that Fallout New Vegas 2 could be their rallying cry, where they rediscover who they were like 10, 15 years ago and make an insanely good game again. But unfortunately, we've got a lot of evidence to the contrary that that wouldn't just happen for reasons beyond just Obsidian's personal abilities, but also how pretty much everyone that I've talked about has a good reason for New Vegas 2 not to exist. So let's just recap all the things we know for sure. Like, let's make sure that we aren't like accidentally projecting any more than we are, because we've covered a lot of topics here as I try to get more comfortable in this camping chair, but I just don't think that's gonna happen. So what we know for sure is that nothing has been promised about a New Vegas 2. No one has even uttered the words New Vegas and 2 in any sort of order like that within the Microsoft, Obsidian, or Bethesda brass. Or at least if they said it, it was definitely saying it in a way that says, no, we're not doing anything like that right now. The reason people are speculating is because for the first time in about a decade, all the properties needed to make a New Vegas 2 are in the same place. They're under the same umbrella. Microsoft owns Obsidian, the creators of New Vegas. Microsoft owns Bethesda, owners of the Fallout IP and makers of the modern Fallout games. So in theory, if Microsoft made everyone work together, it could happen. But as we discussed, everyone has a reason for it not to happen. And Microsoft and Bethesda already have a lot going on. Like, if it did happen, it wouldn't happen for a long time because we got to finish other projects first, lest we just abandon projects and lose a ton of money. And finally, for various reasons, you can call it an opinion if you want, but based on reviews, based on their previous games that they've put out in the last 5 years compared to the games they put out when we all fell in love with Obsidian, and also based on the fact that the staff that made those games isn't there anymore, Obsidian is not the game company we remember. It's just time destroys all eventually. So now that we've reviewed, let's make some reasonable assumptions about what's going to happen with New Vegas 2 if it happens at all. If it's going to come out, it's going to hopefully come out between 2026 and 2030, probably on the later end of that, because they would need to do full pre-production and a proper treatment of the game, assuming they secretly greenlit it like yesterday. And if it is announced within the next 2 years, like announced really early, be very, very, very wary of anything that would come from it, because we've seen now time and time again that games that get announced way too early end up becoming massive disappointments, because the longer a game is in the zeitgeist of like, I guess, gamers knowing, oh, it's coming, the more hype it gets. And there is a certain point where you hit the event horizon of hype to where nothing you put out will ever be good enough, and if anything, all you've done is create a disaster for yourself at launch. And speaking of launching, if it does come out, I'm calling it now, it will be the most controversial game of the year it comes out. It will be buggy on launch, but people are going to say, oh, this is just like the first game. However, they will lose a considerable part of the fan base because they will not offer as much mod support as Fallout New Vegas used to offer. Also, just calling it again, Epic Games exclusive, at least for the first year. So mark my words on all those. That's what I think is going to happen to New Vegas 2 if it does happen. But again, I am still leaning on the side of no one has a reason for New Vegas 2 to happen. In conclusion, do not trust anyone that says anything about a New Vegas 2 coming. I don't care how convincing they sound, but right now nothing has been confirmed, and let's face it, it's in nobody's best interest. Essentially, no one has good reason to make a Fallout New Vegas 2 right now, and I think nobody would be happy with the final product if it does get made. And it's just not going to live up to anyone's expectations, especially because we've been modding and recycling the first Fallout New Vegas game for 10 years now, and we're very set in our ways. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a situation where like everyone from the Mario speedrunning community had a big fit about the remasters, but you do you guys. And finally, there is no way that a Fallout New Vegas 2 would not be a disaster, and it's not going to please anyone. There's going to be a big mess on launch, and it will be the most controversial game of the year it comes out, if it comes out. And that's going to do it for today. I thank you all for joining me on this. I am trying to further improve these videos as I go and see if I can't make this a more viable format. I feel like this one is going better than the first one at the very least because I was able to reshoot things and get it better. The cat, while he is not here, he's usually down here. I don't have the camera pan that low because he was just wandering around today, and he's just being a silly, I don't know if you noticed, but I had to like do 2 different recording sessions for this second recording session because he was naughty, but that's beside the point. I am going to finally drink my coffee and call it a day. Thank you so much for joining me. Patrons, thank you so much if you are watching the uncut version. This is just adding to the channel, making it bigger and better. And please stay safe, stay indoors, wash your hands, wear your mask and practice social distancing when you need to go out, and enjoy this cat video. Saucy boy. Whatever are you doing? I'm gonna pet you. Oh yeah, this is dark. It probably won't show up that well. Would you like a toy? See, aren't pets nice? Whew. No, you missed it. It went into the office. It went into the office, you dork. I need to vacuum. Oh, you gonna go find the toy? I found the toy. Oh, you gonna jump for it? Jump for it. Oh, that was a good jump. You gonna bring it back? Oh, you're just gonna come to me? You gonna come to Daddy? Fluff him. Nope, no interest. He must lurk in the hall unless it is snack time. I really should have put the light mod on.